I would now like to introduce your moderator for today's webinar, Jim Wilson, Vice President of Sales and Customer Success at ZPE Systems. Jim?
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you all for joining us today. With me is Renee Newman. Renee has over 22 years experience designing out-of-band networks. He's worked with customers like Apple and Societe Generale and Visa to help design their network and make sure that they're up. Renee?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So today we're going to talk about getting through what we're going through today and how out-of-band can help. So why don't we start with what out-of-band is?
Okay, perfect. So out-of-band is, as a concept, is not new. It's around for quite a long time, and essentially it provides you access to your what I would call the primary interfaces of your infrastructure devices. So that is anything which provides you connectivity to your devices in any stage of their life cycle. So it's typically your console port on your firewalls, your routers, your switches. It's your IPMI interfaces or your KVM interfaces. On your servers, but beyond that, it can be any of your infrastructure devices like your rack PDUs, sensors, or just as simple as a SH session. So these interfaces are then typically provided, or access to them is typically provided through a dedicated network. It can be either a management network or really a separated, dedicated network, an out-of-band network. And because of the ability to provide access to your devices at any stage of the life cycle or their operational mode, that's what makes out-of-band so critical to any infrastructure.
Okay. So up here you've got a quote, out-of-band is not mission critical until it is. It seems like with today's environment, that's definitely true. So walk us through what you think the most, if you're going to build an out-of-band network, what are the key things that you need to be focusing on?
Yeah, okay, perfect. So in a modern out-of-band system, what are you looking for? As I mentioned, the out-of-band solutions as such are around for quite a long time. So over the years, there have been a lot of different solutions and technologies around. So really what you're looking in today's system is something which is vendor neutral, easy to use, open and reliable, foremost secure, and very scalable and powerful. So these are roughly the ideas which you are looking for in a modern solution. That is slightly different to what those systems have delivered in the past.
So let's start with the off the bat with vendor neutral.
As I mentioned before, you have out-of-band is around for quite a long time. So very likely you will have already some form of an out-of-band in your environment. If you use it or not, it's a completely different matter, but all of your switches, all of your routers are coming with a console interface. All of your servers come with some form of a management interface as well. And then on top of that, you might have an existing old out-of-band system somewhere in your infrastructure. So ideally, you want to have, if you are introducing today something, you want to have something there which can work with all your existing infrastructure interfaces or out-of-band interfaces. Because in a lot of cases, it's not very easy to replace them. If you think about certain infrastructure devices like rack PDUs or anything like it, they have a tendency to be deployed once and then stay there for a very, very long time. And the same can happen with servers, which might stay for a long time, or specific routers, firewalls, etc. So ideally, you want something which can work with what you already have and supports you in deploying new things or the up-to-date generation of out-of-band solutions, essentially.
Okay, so basically decreasing the number of applications as well?
That is correct. And essentially, you want to unify all of your out-of-band systems which you have into one single system, one single interface, where all of your users get the same experience, the same level of security, and they don't have to worry about, is that system now maintained through solution A or solution B.
Okay, well, that probably brings us into the next one, which is ease of use and accessibility. How does
Yes.
ZPE differ, I guess?
Yeah, so and essentially what we're looking for here is, again, because of the age of the different out-of-band systems and solutions, they are all coming with a different set of requirements, client requirements. In the very early days, traditionally these systems would have been client-based, so meaning you would have some form of software which you needed to install on your laptop or on your desktop, and that software then had to work together with the operating system, had to work together with your solution and the different firmware versions. And that was quite cumbersome. Over the time, that then evolved into more browser-based solutions, but even those required typically some form of a client. Quite often these clients were then Java-based, so they required that you have on your laptop, on your desktop, again, some form of a Java version installed, some form of a client on top of that as well. And again, all of these had to work together. Your browser needed to be on a specific version to work together with your client, to work together with your Java version. And then if you apply the security patch to your operating system, that might break everything. So it was really a nightmare. So accessibility wasn't so much a case of, okay, how easy is it then to use when I can use it? It was more a case of, is it currently working? If I push a change, will that break something on my out-of-band system? So it made it quite hard to maintain. And there were scenarios where customers try to use the out-of-band system, but in the middle of the night they realized that there was an outage and they couldn't use it because the software which they currently ran on their systems wasn't compatible with the current deployment. So ideally, you want to avoid that. Ideally, you want to have your out-of-band solution working with the tools you have by default already on your system. So that means your out-of-band solution should work with the different operating systems you might encounter. Might that be a Windows system, might that be a Mac OS or a Linux system, or even any of the mobile operating systems like Android, iOS. And it should work with any modern browser because of that as well. So again, here you would expect it to work with Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, or any of the other current browsers which you might encounter on your systems. And because of that, you would expect that the solution supports standard protocols. For web interfaces, that means today HTML5, and for text-based, more CLI-driven access, you're talking about SSH. So ease of use is, for us, the ability that the end user can use whatever tools they have currently at hand without the need to install a client, maintain its compatibility or anything like it, and that they can use standard protocols and interfaces to interact with the solution.
Making sure that when you need it, it's up, it's running, and you don't have to update your Java.
That is correct.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. So I guess that brings us to the next, which is probably part of that. Open and reliable.
Yeah.
How does, what difference does that make, I guess? Well, reliable, we know.
Yeah, correct. So everybody expects reliability, specifically from an out-of-band system, correct? But reliability, we have to think a step further ahead, and that means we shouldn't just expect reliability on the hardware level. We shouldn't just expect reliability on the operating system level. If you look at the traditional deployment method for out-of-band systems, then we are looking here at a break-fix scenario, meaning the out-of-band was deployed, everything was cabled up, and then if something broke, somebody logged into the out-of-band system and tried to access the end device. Now, one half of the time it worked, the other half of the time it didn't work because somebody in the data center just unplugged a cable and nobody knew about it, or he never plugged it back in. So reliability isn't just reliability of the out-of-band solution as a vendor is dictating it, but as well reliability of the actual implementation. And the only way how you can get that reliability is by bringing the out-of-band system closer to your daily operations. And what I mean by that is there's no point of deploying a very expensive out-of-band system and then only to use it for break-fix scenarios. The system is not going to fulfill its full capabilities. Out-of-band systems can do more. They can assist you, for example, during change management processes. They can assist during origin deployments, decommissions, moves, or any other daily operations. And the way how they can do it is by integrating with the existing business processes or business tools. So you should expect from a current out-of-band system that it can interact with your automation tools. Let that be Puppet, Chef, or Ansible, that it can support any of the current scripting languages like Python, like Ruby. But beyond that as well, current management deployments, you will find that companies are starting to package up certain management tasks in predefined containers. So ideally, you want that your out-of-band system can support those Docker apps or those containers in some shape or form as well. And that is what we can give you with the ZPE solution. So with ZPE, the out-of-band can become a part of your daily operations. That is two things. Number one, or actually multiple things. Number one, it increases the value you are getting out of the solution. Number two, the users are getting more comfortable with the solution because they're interacting with it on a more regular basis. They know how it behaves. They know what tools they can use. And number three, you get that reliability, which I was talking about earlier, which means the users know that all the ports, that the entire system is working and that they can use it as well when there is a crisis, that would be at 2 or 3 o'clock at night.
Okay. So out of band should be a lot more flexible than it was in the past, and that rack U does more.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. So the next one that we run into, secure and flexible. Well, given today, Zoom bombings and security being highly important, people working from home, what are the key things you should be looking for?
Yeah, so security is on everybody's mind today, correct, and for good reason. The out-of-band solution in itself is in a quite a unique space because it provides access as well to your infrastructure devices through dedicated management interfaces, which are not as easily exposed to these kind of multiple attacks. So they are very good interfaces to have for troubleshooting, for example. That means as well, though, that you should expect from your out-of-band solution the same level of security, if not even a higher level of security than you would expect from your production network or from your management network for that matter. Another reason for that is as well, specifically if you're looking at the current environment, there are going to be cases where the out-of-band system might be directly exposed to the internet. So specifically, if you might not be on site, if you don't have access to your management network for whatever reason, the out-of-band solution might be your last leg into your organization to fix any challenges you might face. So because of that, security is quite a central point to any out-of-band solution. So what should you expect from a vendor who provides you with an out-of-band solution? You should expect that he's providing you with a modern operating system, which is up-to-date, patched, provides you with current software solutions, which are maintained as well. Okay, you should expect from him that whatever solution he's developing inside is written with security in mind. It's undergoing regular security checks, and ideally, that is one thing which we, for example, do with our customers a lot, is that you do multiple penetration tests with your customers, ideally which are directly driven by your customers, so that you get a fair response to your own security. Now, should there be any findings, all of these fixes should directly flow back into the product so that all the customers can benefit from the increased security. So that is a bare minimum what you should expect from a security layer. Now, besides those basic expectations, I think specifically in today's times is it's not enough that a customer just trusts the word of a vendor. So that is, for example, what we are providing as well, is we are providing our customers with full access to the operating system so that they can implement their own security requirements, that they can verify. But on top of that is, if they have already a security solution of their choice, i.e. they have like a firewall provider or any other security solution of their choice, which they want to roll out to the out-of-band system, then the out-of-band solution should provide you with the capability to directly utilize those security providers on top of your out-of-band. So the idea here is that to utilize your out-of-band, you gain the same level and the same management capabilities from your trusted security provider like a Palo Alto. And then from there on, you gain access to your out-of-band. And what we can, for example, provide you with is that you can run those security appliances directly on top of our hardware. So because of that, you gain the capability of a trusted security provider. But even if you don't want to utilize that and you want to use our own security, you can still use the same functionality to gain more input, more insight into your management network or into your connected devices by just running any form of analyzer or information management system.
Okay, so in order to make this secure, because this might be exposed to the internet, you have the ability to run a Palo Alto or a Checkpoint firewall the same without having to add an additional appliance?
That is correct.
Okay.
So you can use all the tools which come directly with the solution to secure the box. So there is no real need to run anything else, but we fully support the customer's need to run their own security provider of choice, like a Palo Alto, like a Fortinet or anything like it. And you can directly run them on top of our appliance.
That's impressive. All right. So the next one you talked about was simple. Everyone talks about simple to scale. How is ZPE different?
I guess the way we are different is the way we are doing it. I mean, if you look at the traditional out-of-band deployments, then you were typically looking at mostly data center settings. And that meant from a scalability perspective that you scaled up from a few racks to a few more racks. But that meant as well that you had a lot of the infrastructure already in place. Okay, so let's say you had already 10 racks and you added another 10 racks. You had a lot of the network infrastructure already in place. You had a lot of the basic services already in place. What we see now is, though, that out-of-band is moving outside of the data center setting. It's still there, but it expands to your branch offices, to your remote offices, anywhere where you have some form of infrastructure. And why does it make sense there? Because you need to have the same level of access, because specifically today, there might not be a chance for you to go to these sites, and nobody knows when you can go back on site. So with an out-of-band solution there, you gain a lot of visibility, a lot of access into these remote sites as well. Now, that means that you're not only have to scale in data center, but you have to scale across the globe potentially across all your different sites, be that a small remote office, or it might be just a home office where you maybe have only one guy sitting, but you want to give him the same level of security and access that he would get from his office. So how do we do it? The way we do it is for specifically for the data center setting, we support functionalities like zero-touch provisioning, which essentially you just plug the device in and it puts its entire configuration from a ZTP server over to support through automation tools, which we mentioned before, like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, which can push the entire configuration out to the device. Plus, you can automate the deployment of end devices connecting to our deployments as well. And you can use the same functionality, the same concepts, and transfer them over to your branch offices. We have a solution which we call ZPE Cloud, and that allows you to ship a device to your remote sites completely unconfigured. They arrive there, somebody just plugs the cables in, powers the units up, and then through the cloud, through the ZPE Cloud, you can push the entire configuration down to the device. And the way how you do it, the scripts, the configuration files are very, very similar to the ones which you have already used in your data center setting for your zero-touch deployment for your automation tools. So we make it extremely easy to scale not only in your data center, but outside of that setting as well in form of your remote and branch offices. We can provide you with central access and central management to all of these systems.
Okay. So you're getting a lot more ease of use, both behind a firewall and through the cloud?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. The next one I've got to ask, what do you have against the Toyota? You're talking powerful and fast.
Yes, I have nothing against the Toyota. Toyota is it's a nice car, but it was created for a specific purpose, correct? So it's doing its job. It brings it from A to B. Now, if you are using or deploying a solution and you design it specifically just to do A and B, then you will find that these solutions struggle typically to do tasks C and D. So i.e. they are struggle to cope with the unexpected. And what we experience today specifically is nothing but the unexpected. I don't think that only very few people have envisioned anything like this ever happening. And I don't think that anybody has ever thought about the impact it might have. So ideally, you want to have an out-of-band solution which can cope with your changing business needs. So that has your business requirements, that it can support those as they are today, but has enough capacity to cope with any changing ones. So that means, for example, any of the customers who are currently running as a Nodegrid solution from us, we're directly able to utilize the same platform without any additional hardware deployments and deploy additional agents, for example, in the out-of-band network to gain additional visibility into the network, or to add additional features to their management network, which they didn't need it before or never even thought about that they might need them before. So that is the things which we are talking about here when we're talking about powerful and fast.
Okay. So having the power to take advantage of new opportunities, not having to worry about forklift upgrades, and always on and available is what you're talking about, I think.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Here you've got a diagram. Can you walk me through how this works? And
yeah, so essentially that diagram is providing you an overview of how the entire solution can look like. So on the right-hand side, you have your traditional data center deployment. So this is where you have one or two devices, or you have multiple devices in your racks, and they're all managed by our Nodegrid solutions. So you can see here that we can connect to servers, switches, router, storage, sensors, rack PDUs. Probably what is here important to point out is that any of our appliances can manage any of these devices. So we don't have specific appliances which are dedicated to one specific job. Again, every appliance can supports the full set of capabilities. So then in your data center, you can scale that up. You have support for your central access through your NOC. You get your events and the alarms. And then typically what you find in your data center is some form of a VPN concentrator or something like it. That can be your dedicated own system, or you can utilize a Nodegrid solution for that as well. On the left-hand side, then you see your remote and branch offices. So range from regional offices to just very, very small sites. As I mentioned before, maybe where you have only 1 or 2 people sitting. So all of these are connecting then or provide the same out-of-band capabilities. But on top of that, they can utilize their network connectivity, their cellular failover connectivity to provide you that out-of-band functionality, as well if you wanted to additional redundancy on your WAN connections for those sites as well. So there are a lot of functionalities built in, which help you to maintain the overall system. And as I mentioned before, you can use the ZPE Cloud to manage all of your devices. I should mention here, ZPE Cloud is an optional functionality here. It eases the management of your remote sites, but it's not a required part.
Okay. So at the end of the day, a good out-of-band network is vendor neutral, easy to use, open, secure, simple to scale, and powerful and fast. Those are the key things you've got to look for when building an out-of-band network, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so we do have a couple questions. Renee, the first question, given today's reality and today's environment, what can I do with my existing infrastructure if I can't get out there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So as I mentioned before, out-of-band is new. So the likelihood that you have already some form of out-of-band connectivity available to you is very, very high. That can be either an existing out-of-band system, which is not really maintained, could be available management interfaces which are configured on your network, but there's no overarching management to it or anything like it. So the likelihood that you already have something is there. Now, what could you do then today? You can use our Nodegrid Manager, for example. Just deploy that in your data center or in your remote site. The deployment is very easy. You just spin up a virtual machine on a hypervisor. And the Nodegrid Manager can manage all of your existing out-of-band system or systems and provide your end users with that centralized access with the same level of security which I mentioned before, because we can interact like a terminal server. So all what the end user needs is, as mentioned before, just a standard SSH client or an HTML5 based browser, and all the connectivity inside your data center is completely abstracted away by the Nodegrid Manager. So that is something which you can do today. Probably takes you around about half an hour to get the first connections up and running. If even that, you probably can manage it fast as well.
What best practice does Nodegrid supplement, and does it make any obsolete?
It definitely doesn't make any best practices obsolete. I mean, the concept of out-of-band is to provide you this ultimate access to your end devices in case there is a failure, and hopefully that you can recover from that failure. So to have an out-of-band is as critical today as it was 10 years, 20 years ago. So that is still there. Maintaining it and making it more part of your daily life, I think that is one best practice which is coming far more to the forefront. So whatever out-of-band system you have, move it out of the break-fix scenario. I'm only going to use it once a year, more into the out-of-band system should be part of my normal daily management of my critical infrastructure.
That's great. All right. Well, Renee, we are out of time. So for everyone who joined us, I'd like to say thank you. And Renee, thank you very much for this insightful presentation.
You're welcome.